Welcome to the 10th episode of the Street Roots Podcast, hosted by yours truly, DeVon Pouncey. Today we have a very special guest, as United States Senator from the state of Oregon, Jeff Merkley, will join us. The senator will discuss his proposed legislation to stop the Trump administration from unleashing federal troops on protesters in American cities. He gives us an update on the detainment of kids locked up in cages and detention centers, and he also discusses the Make Medications Affordable by Preventing Pandemic Price-gouging Act and much more. Sit back and enjoy, everybody, as Senator Merkley joins us here on the Street Roots Podcast. On the line right now, we have a very special guest on the Street Roots Podcast. We have United States Senator of the state of Oregon, Senator Jeff Merkley. Senator Merkley, thank you so much for taking your time out of your very busy schedule to join us here on the Street Roots Podcast.
You're welcome. It's good to be with you.
Absolutely. And so obviously there's a lot of hot topics going on right now, and we'll definitely try to touch on a few of them during the time that we have you here. But I would like to start off with the federal policing that the Trump administration had sent to the city of Portland and just some of their tactics. I know you came out with some legislation in this regard that you introduced to the Senate. And can you just speak on sort of a twofold question here, the federal policing and what that legislation was that you introduced, but also could you speak to some of the local policing tactics and where you stand on that as well?
Well, I must say I've never seen anything like what happened here in Portland. The president really ran a road test for his secret police strategy. He deployed Customs and Border Protections, Federal Protective Service, U.S. Marshals. They arrived at a point where things were much calmer in Oregon, and they just poured gasoline on the fire. What they did was, rather than targeting, if you will, folks who were involved in some violent acts, they targeted peaceful crowds. Storm out of the federal building at about 11 p.m., armed to the teeth, dressed in camouflage, and just start attacking everybody in sight with tear gas, with pepper ball bullets, with rubber bullets, with flashbang grenades, with batons. And this is just unbelievable. The chair of judiciary held a hearing yesterday, Ted Cruz of Texas, to basically say, these are wonderful tactics. And it was titled, ironically, Protection of Peaceful Protest. Well, what the president's teams did is they came to Portland to attack peaceful protests as part of a campaign strategy to present the president as a law and order candidate. Well, it's not law and order to attack peaceful protesters and violate their civil rights, to send federal agents running through the streets, grabbing people at random, throwing them into unmarked vans. These are authoritarian tactics. The president has admired those tactics from strong men around the world like Putin in Russia and Erdogan in Turkey and Duterte in the Philippines. But I never imagined in my wildest dreams he'd bring these secret police operations to America, where we are a constitutional, we the people democratic republic. So I objected in the strongest possible terms, tried to create national attention to these secret police practices, introduced the No Secret Police in America Act. I have more than 40 sponsors on it. I'm trying to get it into the Corona bill. The Senate Republicans are fighting that. But fortunately, I think that the exposing what they were doing has caused the administration to rethink their operation. They really thought it would be a great political idea to show how powerful the president is, how strong he is. Instead, it shows what an authoritarian he is and how unfit he is for office in our nation.
Absolutely. Do you have any thoughts on some of the local policing taking place in Portland?
Well, the local policing, I'll leave to the local officials who have much better insight on the ups and downs, but I've really been focused on the federal police.
Absolutely. Can you speak to what's going on with the CARES Act and COVID-19 assistance. Obviously, folks have been getting assistance up to this point. But as this thing kind of progresses and we kind of stay in the land of the unknown, could you speak to where things are currently with that and what folks could potentially be expecting in the very near future on that front?
Well, it's way over 2 months ago that the House passed the next bill that addressed the fundamentals that are needed around the nation: help with education, help with health care, help to state and local governments, national support for testing and tracing, national support for safe elections, a whole host of things that are relevant. The Senate Republican leadership has taken what I'd call a check the box strategy. They've delayed for any action for 2 months. They know that they have to do something, but they don't really want to help the American people. They want to do more tax breaks for the richest and most powerful forces in the country, and they don't like the idea of rebuilding the economy from the ground up. They don't like supporting insurance payments that have helped families stay afloat. They don't like a moratorium on evictions or a moratorium on utility cutoffs, which I've been fighting for, is in the House bill. In other words, there's a real conflict of values. I believe that we shouldn't try to rebuild the economy by giving more to those who have most, but to help ordinary families be able to function. And you can't function if you don't have water, electricity, and broadband. You can't function if you're evicted from your apartment in the middle of this. You need that basic support, and the unemployment insurance extra $600 per week has really, really helped families in that regard. And it's helped the whole economy because folks can buy groceries, they can pay their rent, they can pay their utilities, they can get the fundamentals. We also need a lot of support for the transition in our schools and for childcare. All these things are addressed, but Republicans hate the idea of helping ordinary families. Again, so we have this conflict. The philosophy. It's always more for those who have most, from my colleagues across the aisle. I think we're going to end up with, there's going to be some sort of bill that will address many of the fundamentals I'm talking about, but not as generously and boldly as the House bill did. When I say check the box, what I'm saying is they know they have to do something, but they don't really treat this like the worst pandemic in 100 years. They don't treat this as the worst economic collapse since the Great Depression. In some ways, a faster collapse than the Great Depression. This is a major challenge for Americans on both fronts, and it needs bold, substantial assistance to get through it. And I'm hoping that's what will come out of this.
Absolutely. Last year, you surprised us all at Street Roots and you attended the Street Roots family breakfast. You came to the office and you spoke with a lot of our vendors in the office, took some time out to speak with them. Still very grateful for that opportunity there. But when you spoke at the family breakfast, as you were one of the speakers there, you were very outspoken about the detention centers, the immigration detention centers, the kids in cages issue to sound, I mean, I know that sounds pretty harsh, but you were very outspoken on that front. Can you give us sort of what the update is on that? Because obviously the pandemic has taken place. Now we're in a very unique social climate, and that sort of kind of quieted down on a mainstream level. But because you were so invested in that, could you speak to where things are? And is anything being done about that at the moment?
Well, I don't have good news for you. What the administration basically did is started blocking everyone who was seeking asylum from crossing the border. And so they were stranded on the Mexican side of the border, and these families who didn't have funds, who didn't have family members there to stay with, they're on the streets. They're being exploited by gangs in these border cities. And by exploited, I'm talking about rape, murder, robberies, kidnappings, and extortions. It's really a horrific situation for families and for the children. Most recently, the administration, when children have been able to cross the border, is deporting them back without ever getting them kind of due process for asylum. But it's so quick, it's so fast, it's so out of sight, and the nation is distracted by other issues that the harm is probably equal or greater than what we experienced before, but it's hidden.
Absolutely. Can you speak about your Make Medications Affordable by Preventing Pandemic Price-gouging Act?
You bet. We're pumping billions and billions of dollars of Americans' taxpayer funds into development of drugs and vaccines. But the administration took out a clause that's been around forever, for 40 years, which basically said if we, the taxpayers, fund the development, you can't gouge us on the price on the back end. And they took that clause out. I mean, that's just absolutely insane. That's crazy. We're going to fund the development, pay for the production, and then we're going to be gouged by the prices. So my bill is intended to essentially counter that and say if we are funding the development and the production, you can't gouge us on the prices. It was a tool that was rarely utilized because it didn't need to be. Its very presence kept drug companies from gouging on prices when the public had paid for the development. So I'm trying to restore that very reasonable provision.
Well, Senator Merkley, I know that you've got a lot on the schedule here today, and I want to say thank you so much for joining us here on the Street Roots Podcast. It's greatly appreciated. Keep up the hard work. I know the spirit of the times are, as I mentioned before, very unique, but keep up the good work.
I'll keep at it. It was a pleasure to see you all last year, and I look forward to being able to visit again.
Yeah. Whenever the time permits, we'll gladly take you back to join us. So thank you very much for that, Senator.
You're welcome.
All right. Have a good day.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Big news on the horizon as Street Roots vendors will be selling the print edition of our publication on August 12th. Be on the lookout for more information on that front in the very near future. Also, Street Roots Media is still dependent upon the generous donations of the community. All you have to do is go to streetroots.org/donate to make a contribution. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of the Street Roots Podcast with DeVon Pouncey.